The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
A potentially massive nor'easter looming over the East Coast, the conflicting models pointing to where the Arctic blast could strike first.
Because the potential penalty, the total potential penalty, the maximum penalty, is life imprisonment.
Britain's King Charles says the law must take its course after the arrest of his younger brother, Andrew. The Epstein connection at the center of the case. And
Mark Zuckerberg officially takes the stand in a landmark social media addiction trial. I'm Jeff Harris in Washington. Coming up, the allegations against the tech giant and what the Meta CEO told jurors.
From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and on this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with a massive winter storm now forming, which could barrel through the East Coast this weekend into Monday. We are following several major storms moving across the country. A system that dumped rain and snow in California is now moving through Utah and Colorado. A potentially massive winter storm now forming, which could barrel through the East Coast Sunday into Monday. Also, the Supreme Court says Trump violated federal law when he imposed sweeping tariffs across the globe by citing emergency economic authority. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the majority opinion that Trump needs authorization from Congress to exercise those tariffs. The justices agreed on the decision 6-3. Trump responded to the ruling, calling it a disgrace. Just hours after the ruling, the president said he's enacting a 10% global tariff under a trade law. However, those can only be in place for 150 days unless Congress were to vote to extend them. We are learning more about the victims of the tragic avalanche that killed 8 skiers this week. A group of moms on a ski trip together were among the victims. The representatives for the families, Jess Weaver, sharing the following statement, saying in part, "We are devastated beyond words. Our focus right now is supporting our children through this incredible tragedy and honoring the lives of these extraordinary women." Police in Rhode Island say multiple people intervened to stop the suspect in Monday's high school hockey game shooting. Police say the suspect shot and killed his ex-wife and his own son. 3 others were critically injured, and we are hearing directly from one of those Good Samaritans.
My hand got caught in the sliding chamber. He shot, and then my hand got caught, and I was holding him down with my body. And you could see him trying to move his finger to move it, but my hand was in the gun, so it didn't work.
Michael Black says 3 other men leaped over their seats, tackling the suspect, who authorities say fatally shot himself. Turning to new developments now, more fallout with the Epstein files. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It likely stems from his time serving as a British trade envoy and accusations he shared confidential information with Jeffrey Epstein. This is what President Trump had to say after being asked about the development while speaking to reporters on Air Force One.
I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing to see it.
He was released under investigation as this probe continues. Mountbatten Windsor has previously denied any wrongdoing when it comes to Epstein. And new details. Les Wexner under oath in the congressional investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. His 5-hour-long deposition just released. Remember, this deposition happened Wednesday at Wexner's home in New Albany. Members of the House Oversight Committee questioned him. No Republican members made the trip, though staffers did. The GOP releasing part of that video you're about to see.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein have sexual contact of any kind with young women or girls?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein sexually abuse young women or girls?
Absolutely not.
Wexner, who is 88 years old, had several lawyers with him. In everything we've watched so far, they did object at times, but didn't stop Wexner from answering. Democrats on the committee were skeptical if Wexner was truthful. His attorney says he answered every question honestly. Refugees legally in the U.S. could soon face immigration detention if they have not received their green cards. It's part of a new policy the Department of Homeland Security unveiled in court this week. Refugees are already required to apply for green cards, but the new policy makes not having one a means for detention, even if their green card applications are under review. The DHS filing the policy in court as part of its challenge to a Minnesota judge's decision to temporarily block ICE agents from detaining some 5,600 refugees in the state. The Department of Housing and Urban Development proposed a new rule that could lead to thousands of people getting evicted. The rule would require every person living in public housing to provide proof of citizenship or eligible status. That includes people 62 or older who previously only had to show proof of age. HUD Secretary Scott Turner said in a statement that, quote, the days of illegal aliens, ineligibles, and fraudsters gaming the system are over. A left-leaning policy center estimates 20,000 families could lose housing assistance because of the rule change. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand Wednesday in a landmark social media addiction trial in Los Angeles. The plaintiff accusing the tech giant, among others, of intentionally designing addictive platforms causing severe mental health issues. This case marking the first time Zuckerberg has appeared at a civil trial. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris reports.
Zuckerberg testified for hours on Wednesday, admitting that children under 13 years old bypass age restrictions by lying about their birth dates, but those users are then removed. He also stood by previous testimony that scientific research doesn't conclusively link social media use and poor mental health outcomes. Outside the Los Angeles Superior Courthouse Wednesday, dozens of cameras capturing the moment Zuckerberg walked in to testify, appearing for his first civil trial, which is not being televised or live streamed. An attorney representing the plaintiffs saying their strategy was to confront the Meta CEO with his own words.
Time and time again, the documents show that Meta and its personnel were provided with an opportunity to take a choice between protecting kids or protecting its profits. And each time they protected their profits.
As for Zuckerberg's testimony, news outlets inside reporting, he argued users spend significant time on the app because of its value and a meaningful amount lie about their age, while also pushing back on claims the company made increasing time spent on Instagram a goal. When asked whether a reasonable company should help ignore or prey on a child, Zuckerberg responded by saying, quote, I think a reasonable company should try to help a person that uses its services. Now, along with press, the courtroom was also filled with parents who believe Meta's platforms harm their children, including some who were at Zuckerberg's Senate hearing in 2024 when he turned and apologized to them.
I can only speak for myself that it was a very strong argument that he did not tell the truth in that congressional hearing. It does not match any of the internal documents that we are now seeing, and he's not able to answer those questions now either.
The plaintiff in this case, a now 20-year-old woman being identified as Kaylee GM, alleges that her use of Instagram at a young age led to a dangerous dependency, anxiety, depression, and self-harm. The lawsuit accusing Meta and YouTube of using big tobacco tactics to addict young users. Accusations Meta is disputing, arguing the plaintiff's mental health problems were caused in part by family issues, not app design. But her attorney's pushing back.
There's no earthly reason why a kid should spend 7-8 hours a day on social media. In and of itself, that is harmful. And it is addictive by design. It is not a coincidence.
Now, a decision in favor of the plaintiff could force significant changes to platform design and lead to substantial damages, setting a precedent for the thousands of similar lawsuits. Testimony is expected to last through March, and it is worth noting TikTok and Snapchat settled before trial. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Just 16 hours a week spent on social media by college students puts them at higher odds of loneliness. That's according to a new report published in the Journal of American College Health. Out of 65,000 students analyzed in the study, those who spend up to or more than 30 hours a week had a 21 to 38% higher chance of loneliness. The author of the research suggests academic institutions should educate students on the social media effects and encourage time limits. Researchers in Australia are raising concerns about popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs. They found that the shot can cause malnutrition and lead to scurvy disease. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team. And when you think about how many people use these drugs, how widely popular it is, you know, it does raise concerns. Tell us more about what was found.
So a systemic review from the Hunter Medical Research Institute found that while these medications are obviously effective for weight loss, many clinical trials, though, don't track what people are actually eating. So the concern here is the risk of malnutrition. So that includes, you know, a rare but serious condition called scurvy, once known as pirate's disease. This is because sailors on long voyages, they didn't have access to fresh fruits, vegetables. So scurvy is really caused by a vitamin C deficiency. So apparently people nowadays are getting that just because of the lack of nutrition.
Well, staying on that, as you mentioned, I mean, this was common how many years ago? Tell us, what are the symptoms of scurvy to watch out for?
So you want to keep an eye out for these symptoms. Look at that on your screen right there. It shows them. They're pretty serious. So they're things like anemia, loose teeth, bruising, bleeding underneath your skin, swollen or bleeding gums, and then wounds that just don't want to heal. So that's a long list there of things that you can look out for, but just having a proper diet seems like it would be the solution for all of these things.
Yeah, and monitoring, I'm sure, heavily. Emma, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, Emma is going to join us with what doctors are recommending to GLP-1 users and what to do to mitigate these risks. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger will give the Democratic response to President Trump's State of the Union address. Trump is set to deliver that address to Congress next Tuesday. Spanberger will provide the Democratic rebuttal immediately afterward. It comes months after she was elected Virginia's first female governor, campaigning on affordability. In their announcement, party leaders praised her as a dedicated public servant who put service over politics. Coming up next, targeted approach, a closer look at the Trump administration's changing immigration enforcement efforts on the ground in Minnesota. Then, the mayor of New York City's words may be coming back to haunt him. His property tax plan if the state doesn't approve a tax hike on the wealthy. ICE will leave a security force in Minnesota as it winds down its large-scale operation as the multi-billion-dollar fraud investigation intensifies. The National News Desk, Jan Jeffcoat, spoke to Minnesota State Representative Nolan West this week to talk about the ICE operations over the past month and how it looks on the ground right now.
It's been drastically changed since Tom Homan came to town, which exactly what I was hoping would happen. We're seeing a less visible enforcement effort, and Director ICE Todd Lyons and Tom Homan also expressed we want a targeted approach, and that's what we're seeing. None of the stuff we've been seeing in the media of people walking down the street. Now they're going in a much more targeted approach, so we're not having protesters roam the city anymore.
The riots that we've been seeing, and we often see just a snapshot from the media, really of the temperature of what's happening in a location and of some residents there. What are your constituents, though, telling you?
Well, they're glad to see Minnesota be in the national news less when there are riots every day. That was not the case. But they're also happy to see the targeted approach. Even red or blue, a targeted approach works a lot better because the goal is to get dangerous illegal aliens out of the country as soon as possible, and we'll figure out a way to deal with the rest.
And that's really what the goal was from the bounce. So why do we see so many state lawmakers fighting this? Why didn't they just agree to this at the beginning?
Well, Democrats have a strong man problem because people generally view them as weak, according to all the polling. So this is their effort to make themselves look strong. But it comes at the detriment to their constituents. What we need is governments to work together so that we can get dangerous illegal aliens out of the country and make our communities safer without causing undue destruction.
I got to ask you about, speaking of destruction, I got to ask you about some of the damage from rioters. What do you make of the demands of Governor Tim Walz demanding that U.S. taxpayers reimburse his state? How about the state reimburse American taxpayers for getting criminal illegal aliens off the streets of Minnesota? Or how about Minnesota reimburse American taxpayers for the billions of dollars stolen under his watch?
Yeah, that is a basically a proposal to just have something to talk about during the legislative session, which starts today. So more asking for more money, very, very normal for Democrats, especially in Minnesota. But when you look at literal elected officials calling for businesses to go on strike and shut down, I don't know how you can put a voluntary shutdown promoted by local leaders as a cost on the U.S. taxpayer, or the Minnesota taxpayer for that matter.
Right. Speaking of which, how deep is this fraud investigation in your state? Will we see officials at the top held accountable for this?
Well, I doubt it, honestly. That's what we've seen. They hardly even resign in shame, which is what many of them should do. It keeps getting deeper. We've had literal government employees forge documents to try and look like they visited a site. Actually did their jobs to enforce this law, but that's not what we're seeing. I expect us to see billions of more fraud as it goes, but at least we're getting to the bottom of it now, because we've been talking about this for a while and they've denied it exists, but now you cannot deny it.
Right, and you cannot deny what we're seeing also with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's finances also under federal investigation. Is there any kind of investigation on the state level, and why do you think this was able to fly under the radar for so long?
No, I don't have privy to that information, but I assume there's nothing going on at the state level. Our investigators do great work, but they're rarely told to do great work. But I expect the Department of Justice to do their job, find the evidence required, and
so you think she's being protected? Do you think she's being protected by state leaders and state officials?
Well, I don't think they're excited to prosecute her or push any trials, but protected, I don't know if I'd use that term.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Well, we've had a Democrat administration in Minnesota for far too long. In 2009, we had a Republican governor, and hopefully we can return to that after this next election.
In New York City, Mayor Zohran Mamdani receiving heat for threatening to raise property taxes nearly 10% to help close a $5 billion budget gap. He says unless Governor Kathy Hochul agrees to raise taxes on the richest New Yorkers, Mamdani calling it a last resort, proposing to increase property taxes by 9.5%, affecting more than 3 million single-family homes, co-ops and condos, and more than 100,000 commercial buildings. The plan is even Big Apple Democrats shaking their heads. Councilman Oswald Felice of the Bronx saying, quote, New Yorkers are already having to deal with rising costs, food, transportation, housing. The solution to the challenges we face cannot be taking more money out of their pockets. Developing now, a New York Federal Reserve research paper is making waves for finding that U.S. companies and Americans are bearing most of the burden for President Trump's tariffs. White House officials are blasting the report, with Kevin Hassett telling CNBC researchers ignored how important aspects of the import taxes work, focusing only on prices.
The paper is an embarrassment. It's, I think, the worst paper I've ever seen in the history of the Federal Reserve System. The people associated with this paper should presumably be disciplined.
The paper weighed whether countries exporting to the U.S. are lowering their prices or eating the duties. It found 90% of the prices are being passed on. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, the new action one nurse is taking after she says she felt unprotected on the job. Plus, increasing security, the nationwide effort to help organizations protect themselves from cyber threats. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We are taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Loxahatchee, Florida, where a nurse is now suing the hospital she works for after being viciously attacked.
Almost every bone in her face was broken. She almost died.
Leila Lal was attacked in a patient room at HCA Florida Palms West Hospital last February. A patient, Stephen Scantleberry, is charged with attempted second-degree murder. Lal is suing the hospital, its parent company, and Allied Universal Security Service.
And you have an obligation to the public and an obligation to the healthcare workers who you should be striving to protect.
Lal's attorney says the brutal attack last February was preventable, and that hospital has had a number of violent incidents in the past. The lawsuit says HCA Florida and Palms West Hospital, quote, failed to implement additional security and safety measures to protect invitees and employees of the hospital.
The Seattle region is home to critical infrastructure, including ports, aerospace, and tech. But with those industries, FBI Special Agent in Charge Mike Harrington also sees a target for cyber criminals.
We're definitely vulnerable. As I've said, our attack surface, the things our adversaries want to take from us, and the opportunities for them to get in front of us to try to take those things have definitely increased. The good news is the cybersecurity community has really come leaps and bounds in terms of protecting them.
FBI Seattle is part of a nationwide effort aiming to decrease opportunities for cyber attacks through Operation Winter Shield. It lays out a roadmap for individuals and organizations to secure against cyber threats.
To New York, where sharp-eyed NYPD harbor officers were able to save a bald eagle spotted floating on ice here in the Hudson River, frigid Hudson River, I should add. Members of the harbor unit acted swiftly, safely removing that bird and transporting it to a New Jersey animal sanctuary, according to officials. Once nearly extinct in New York, bald eagles are now becoming more common in the Hudson Valley, especially from December through March. Coming up, crime currency, new warnings over the growing role of cryptocurrency in human trafficking networks and online scams nationwide. Plus, a legendary NFL franchise closer to crossing state lines. The tentative deal that would see the Chicago Bears get a new stadium in Indiana. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now.
For the emergency, well, we had a passenger get up and try to access the cockpit. Western 220 Delta 2557, and can you coordinate as security standing by as well as paramedics, please? There's in cuffs in the back of the aircraft, but he did assault another passenger, so we'd like that passenger checked out.
And that is what it sounded like as the pilots reported an unruly passenger who disrupted a Delta Airlines flight headed toward Atlanta on Wednesday. The plane had to turn around and make an emergency landing back in Houston after the passenger exhibited, quote, unlawful behavior. Also, the Chicago Bears said they plan to move across state lines to Indiana. It comes after the Indiana General Assembly unanimously supported legislation to build a new stadium for the NFL franchise. And Hollywood is mourning the loss of Oscar-winning actor Robert Duvall, who died this week at the age of 95. His wife said he died peacefully at his home in Virginia. The stories and more available right now and on our website at thenationaldesk.com. Although cryptocurrency is traceable because it's recorded on a blockchain and linked to a wallet, that's not stopping criminals. A 2026 crypto crime report from Chainalysis shows transactions linked to suspected human trafficking services jumped 85% last year. Investigators say crypto moves money fast across borders without traditional banks, making it easier for traffickers to get paid.
I'm not saying it's completely anonymous. It bills itself as that, but investigators can get around that, particularly if they get it in the hands of your digital wallet.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers are pushing new crypto regulations designed to close loopholes, strengthen consumer protections, and give authorities more tools to track illegal activity. Mortgage rates fell last week to their lowest level in a month. Take a look behind me at the numbers here. The average 30-year mortgage dipped to 6.17%. That's from 6.21%. Also, the Mortgage Bankers Association says that's spurring a push among owners to refinance at high enough levels to force up mortgage demand to 2.8% higher compared to the same time last week. While lower rates are making homes slightly more affordable, new supply is not landing in the market fast enough to put an actual dent in overall costs. Coming up next here on the National News Desk, there are fueling an AI boom and also your electricity bills, why more Americans still back building more data centers. Plus, diplomatic strategy. A look at the Trump administration's major trade deal with Taiwan amid new concerns over China's growing influence in the U.S. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
The new cry for help as a historic sewage spill sends millions of gallons of waste straight into the Potomac. Plus,
Maryland's former governor now criticizing current leadership over its new legislation banning ICE cooperation. I'm Jeff Harris in Washington. Coming up, the harsh comments just made on Capitol Hill.
and weight loss wonder drug or a recipe for malnutrition. The new stark warning from health experts on the popular GLP-1 drug. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, thank you for being here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin this half hour with former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan now sharing some harsh words for current Governor Wes Moore. Hogan saying law enforcement will ignore an emergency bill Moore just signed this week prohibiting cooperation with ICE. Let's go straight to Jeff Harris at the live desk to break down the details. Jeff?
Hogan making the comment on Thursday at the Politico Governors Summit in Washington, D.C. The former Republican governor of Maryland undercutting Moore, who just signed an emergency bill this week banning local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE.
All the local law enforcement officers saying we're going to ignore that because we're required to work with them. When they have violent criminals that they're holding in jail that ICE wants to be detained, they shouldn't be let back on the streets. So there's two sides to this argument.
Now, the bill Moore signed into law would stop local law enforcement from creating new partnerships that allow state authorities to detain non-citizens for 48 hours and end all existing partnerships with ICE by July. The Maryland Democratic governor also speaking out.
I don't answer to the Democratic Party. I don't answer to party bosses. I answer to the only people who made me the governor of Maryland, which is the people of Maryland.
Now, Maryland is just the latest Democratic state banning local partnerships with ICE. New Mexico and Maine recently passed similar laws, joining California, Illinois, and Washington state, among others, which already have bans in place.
The Department of Homeland Security is admitting to errors on its website featuring what it calls the worst of the worst arrested immigrants. The site currently lists about 25,000 people along with the specific crimes the agency says they are tied to. This week, a department spokesperson said charges against hundreds of immigrants were described incorrectly. Many were initially linked to only minor offenses, not serious crimes. DHS says the issue has been resolved. The Trump administration recently announced a major trade deal with Taiwan, lowering tariffs while securing billions in new energy, aircraft, and technology purchases. Earlier this week, our Jan Jeffcoat spoke with China expert and best-selling author Gordon Chang to dive deeper into what's at stake.
Under this new deal, Taiwan agrees to purchase more than $80 billion of U.S. goods, also eliminates or reduces 99% of its tariffs on the U.S. In return, the U.S. is also going to lower most tariffs to Taiwan to 15%. Talk about how important this deal was to strengthen supply chains and also send a message to Beijing.
This certainly sends a message to Beijing, and it says that the United States is behind Taiwan because this comes after the December announcement of an $11.2 billion arms package for Taiwan, and that's the biggest ever. All of this means, when you put it together, is that China is now starting to think that maybe its rhetoric about Taiwan, about historical inevitability of annexing the island, that sounds a little bit hollow right now because the U.S. is there to protect the island.
And it also comes as satellite images show new construction and upgrades at China's nuclear sites. How concerning is this buildup?
Well, China is on the fastest nuclear buildup in the world right now. It is not willing to talk to the United States about arms control, and that means it's not it was very good for the Trump administration to not continue the New START agreement with Russia. That's an arms control agreement with Russia. China was not a part of it. And that means the world's major arms control architecture is really now in tatters because the Chinese refusal to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about some of these latest reports that we're seeing with House lawmakers investigating nonprofits here in the U.S. accused of spreading CCP propaganda. Obviously a huge threat to national security if we're seeing foreign money, CCP money, flowing through American nonprofits to shape protest movements and media narratives. What do you know about this?
This has been going on for quite some time, especially when you look at the 2020 national election. China had a big influence in the Democratic Party primaries and in the general election. This is, and maybe you could say they even had the deciding vote. The point is you see a lot of Chinese activity directed at the American political system from the top to the bottom.
And the State Department linking left-wing groups, we're talking Code Pink, the People's Forum, to Chinese influence operations. And now, the government's vowing complete transparency about these donor networks. But Gordon, how can we prevent the CCP from infiltrating our organizations, our schools, our universities, our businesses, our government?
The most important thing is for the President of the United States to talk about this. The Chinese leader talks about going to war all the time, but we Americans think we're at peace. So we need President Trump to actually talk about the situation we are in, because there are these donor networks. The ones you referred to are centered around Neville Roy Singman, an American billionaire who lives in Shanghai. And he is very closely linked to the CCP because he amplifies their narratives. So this is just investigation of them, but also we need a new awareness that this is a very consequential moment.
Finally, I want to ask you about removing CCP influence at the Panama Canal, a significant step demonstrating Trump's global influence to Xi Jinping. Why do you think it took so long for Panama's Supreme Court and Panama's government to remove companies that had clear ties to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah. First of all, the United States welcomed China into Latin America, and that was, going back into the middle of last decade. So countries naturally ended up with these very strong trade and investment ties with China. If anyone's at fault, it's us, because we opened the door. But now President Trump is moving in the opposite direction. And it's important for him to do so because we see pretty malign activities on the part of the Chinese, the Russians, and the Iranians throughout Latin America, threatening the United States directly.
China expert and best-selling author Gordon Chang. Always a pleasure to talk to you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us here on the National News Desk. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jan.
President Trump unveiling a sweeping maritime action plan aimed at reclaiming U.S. maritime dominance and reducing reliance on foreign-built ships that carry the vast majority of our trade. The initiative lays out what officials describe as the first comprehensive federal effort in decades to rebuild the nation's commercial shipbuilding industry, expanding the U.S. flag fleet, and strengthens maritime supply chains. China's shipbuilding capacity now exceeds that of the U.S. by more than 200 times, according to the Office of Naval Intelligence. And right now, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has declared the Potomac River sewage spill a public emergency and is seeking federal aid for cleanup. It is now considered the largest in U.S. history, dumping more than 240 million gallons of raw sewage into one of the nation's key waterways. This comes as President Trump has criticized local leaders for allegedly mishandling the situation. New details, the NTSB has concluded a chain of errors led to last year's deadly mid-air collision between a Black Hawk helicopter and American Airlines regional jet. The agency releasing its final report on the crash this week. It did not identify a singular cause for the crash, which killed 67 people. Instead, the report blamed multiple failures that took place across different parts of the government, including the FAA and the Army. The report also listed 50 safety recommendations. Most were directed to the FAA. Electricity prices are still Americans' biggest concern regarding data center build-out. It is potentially the tech industry's Achilles heel right now. But overall, the new poll by Politico shows that about 37% of people who would support one built in their area compared to 28% who oppose. The same percentage of people who don't support or oppose. The share of support flips to outright opposition if the data center increases their monthly bills by $50. Virginia Democrats' redistricting effort is facing another holdup in court. The circuit court judge granted a temporary restraining order requested by national Republicans. They objected to the timing and phrasing of a voter referendum that would allow the maps to be redrawn. In January, the same judge ruled that the constitutional amendment to allow the vote was illegally passed. Democrats appealed to the state Supreme Court, which said it will allow the referendum to proceed while the appeal plays out. Military veterans are suing the Trump administration over the president's planned 250-foot triumphal arch. According to the Washington Post, they argue the new structure would hinder the sight lines to the Lincoln Memorial from Arlington National Cemetery and interfere with the intent of nearby monuments. Trump has said the arch is a priority. He told Politico in December he hoped to start construction sometime in the next 2 months. Meanwhile, the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts has voted to approve design plans for President Trump's White House ballroom. Trump demolished the east wing of the White House in October to make way for the ballroom. The project will next need approval from the National Capital Planning Commission, which is set to meet in March. The National Trust for Historic Preservation has sued to stop construction on the project until it undergoes further review and gets approval from Congress. As we look ahead, memorial services honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson will be expanded beyond Chicago to the nation's capital and his home state of South Carolina. The late civil rights leader organization says the services are set for March 1st and 4th. Jackson died earlier this week at age 84. Researchers in Australia are raising concerns about GLP-1 weight loss drugs. They found that the shot can cause malnutrition, leading to serious diseases like scurvy. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team. And given these findings, obviously a logical first step is, of course, calling up your provider, checking in. What else do experts recommend?
So experts aren't saying that people should stop taking GLP-1 shots. They're basically just urging caution and better nutritional monitoring. So they're calling for future clinical trials to include some detailed dietary assessments and for doctors to pay a little bit more closer attention to what patients are eating while they're on these drugs. So they're recommending that you eat, if you are eating smaller portions, you should still make them highly dense nutritional foods.
Are there any other deficiencies aside from vitamin C? And then we mentioned scurvy earlier. What else did researchers find?
Yeah, scurvy was the big one. That was one that came up, one of the examples. Though iron deficiency was another one that could lead to anemia. Also, a lack of vitamin B vitamins can cause a life-threatening brain condition. These are all rare but serious things you got to look out for. And doctors warn that the signs of deficiency like fatigue, nausea, and irritability, they can overlap with the common side effects, which makes them kind of harder to, or easier to miss.
Well, and it also sounds like, as with many treatments, it really needs sharp-eyed monitoring.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, experts recommend working with a registered dietitian and considering screening for some pre-existing deficiencies before you start the treatment. So bottom line here really is that these medications, they can obviously be effective for weight loss. We've seen that many times, but they also require nutrition management to avoid these rare but potentially serious risks.
And it seems like as more research comes out, you know, some people might be taking pause. We'll see. Emma, thank you.
Thanks.
But good information. For more on this Fact Check Team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the president's new Board of Peace to birthright citizenship.
And welcome back to the National News Desk. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. President Trump held the inaugural meeting of his newly formed Board of Peace this past week, getting billions of dollars in commitments from various world leaders to help rebuild Gaza. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, who is part of this board, who's missing, and what are they planning to do?
Well, Steve, it's been pretty interesting to watch how the international community has received Trump's new concept of the Board of Peace, and particularly its application to rebuild Gaza. Notably absent from this week's very first meeting were some of the U.S.'s traditional strong allies, countries like Britain, Canada, Australia, and Japan, not participating in this meeting. Other European hitters like France and Germany and Italy also sitting this one out. When it comes to the Europeans, only Hungary and Bulgaria were participating. Now, the lack of participation from the European continent did get a lot of attention, but experts point out the Board of Peace was specifically created and its current focus is rebuilding Gaza, and that is in the Middle East. And when it comes to the Middle East, some heavy hitters, some of the most important heavy hitters are participating. We're looking at Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, all part of these discussions. We also spoke with Sima Shine. She was a former Mossad official. We were able to talk to her last month, and she said Donald Trump's commitment to rebuilding Gaza is what will make this project possible.
I am very happy to see that the president is so much involved in the events in Gaza, and many have been saying that he will lose interest and go to other issues. And I'm very, very glad that he has the interest, because I don't think Israel on its own and the Palestinians on their own are able to come to any solution, to any terms.
And Steve, the future of Gaza remains one of the most complex international problems, particularly because Hamas is still active in Gaza. Yes, their powers are much diminished. They are very much reduced in numbers, but they are still there. They are still somewhat of a loosely organized force, and they still have weapons. Part of the ceasefire agreement is for Hamas to completely disarm, and many experts don't believe they'll do so voluntarily, so that will be a wait-and-see situation.
National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, thank you. Meanwhile, in a few weeks, the Supreme Court will hear arguments about birthright citizenship, specifically whether all people born in the U.S. should automatically become citizens, even the newborns of visiting foreigners or those who are here illegally. National correspondent Christine Frizzau, you spoke to the author of a new book raising questions about that.
Steve, the book is The Invisible Coup, How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon. And the author, Peter Schweitzer, told me one of the most shocking things he discovered in his research has to do with what's known as birth tourism. He said this is especially prevalent in China, where there are thousands of companies now part of what's becoming a booming industry to help people, especially pregnant women, get visas to come to the United States. Now, he says that he believes it's led to as many as 1 million people getting U.S. birth certificates, which means if they want, among other things, they can eventually vote in U.S. elections.
They advertise openly in China, which means you have tacit government approval. And what these companies say is pay us $60,000 to $70,000. We will help you get through U.S. customs. Once you're here, we will house you in an apartment. And in some places in Southern California, there are entire apartment blocks that are populated by Chinese birth tourists. We will arrange for the medical side of it. When your child is given birth, we'll make sure you get that birth certificate. And when you're ready to fly home, we will fly you back to China.
Now, certainly there are plenty of reasons why people might want to give birth here in the United States, but Schweitzer is making the case that President Trump has appeared to make, that perhaps birth tourism is not what the founding fathers had in mind. Still, it is stated pretty clear in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States. We anticipate we will hear much more about these types of arrangements in the months to come, Steve.
Christine, Kayla, excellent reporting as always. Thank you both for your hard work. Back to you.
Coming up next here on the National News Desk, a backlash brewing. The conservative student group now reported to Child Protective Services. And drug-running drones meet their match. The new technology taking aim at the cartels. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We are taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Maryland, where a conservative student-led group was referred to Child Protective Services. A Maryland high school student says he's faced backlash since he started a Turning Point USA chapter.
A lot of hate has been directed towards us since then, and we have been accused of many things. We've been accused of grooming children. We've been accused of so many things, and misinformation has been spread about our group. We're not doing anything wrong. Our first meeting was in November, and we wrote letters for veterans and had productive discussions about how we can support our veteran community.
The student group was even referred to Child Protective Services, according to community member Nancy Krause, as we mentioned. At a school board meeting, she said parents were not permitted at the club's meeting and took issue with school board members speaking at the club.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, House Bill 211 has got to go.
Some Dalton residents are up in arms about State Representative Casey Carpenter's bill, which aims to protect carpet manufacturers who use PFAS chemicals but claim they didn't know they were harmful.
No one needs to be protected. When you made a bad decision, you step up and you try to fix it.
Protesters have gathered here on Collier Street with signs shouting that their water is under attack. I spoke with one protester who said that Representative Carpenter's bill puts corporations above Georgia's people. Carpenter says he doesn't want to drive manufacturers out of the country because they had to fight costly lawsuits while not knowing that the chemicals they used were dangerous.
It's important to make sure that we hold the right people accountable and not just sue everybody.
The landscape is changing.
We're a long way from coyotes and smugglers putting drugs in a backpack and sneaking across the border at night.
Cartels now using high-tech drones to smuggle drugs, target rival groups, and keep an eye on U.S. agents along the border. As drones get smarter, so does the technology designed to stop them.
Direct energy weapons, they're called lasers.
Over the summer, DHS tested direct energy weapons in North Dakota. Their goal? Deploy them closer to home to protect major events and military installations.
So to come here, high mortgage prices, high home prices have Gen Z taking their own path to invest in their own future. We'll explain. President Donald Trump is invoking the Defense Production Act to promote the production of a controversial weed killer. It's part of an executive order signed Thursday aimed at securing the domestic availability of a type of chemical currently the subject of controversy over alleged links to cancer. The White House says a lack of the herbicide could leave the nation's food supply vulnerable to hostile foreign actors. Now to your money. For generations, buying a home has been the first step towards building wealth in America. But instead of waiting on the housing market to cool off, younger Americans are finding a different way in. The National News Desk, Angelo reports.
While their parents were saving for a down payment on a house, Gen Z is buying stocks on their smartphone.
I think it's really interesting. I think that it makes sense that Gen Z is leaning into the stock market right now because it's accessible, liquid, and it doesn't require a six-figure down payment. But historically, real estate has been one of the most powerful wealth-building tools in America.
A lot of young Americans are taking their savings, their side gig money, a slice of their paycheck, and turning it into weekly stock buys, not through a Wall Street broker, but through an app, making it easier to invest, and it only takes a few dollars. And the numbers back this up. This Wall Street Journal report found in 2015 that only 8% of 26-year-olds had moved money into a brokerage or investment account between the ages of 22 and 26. Today, that number is closer to 40%, and this does not include 401ks.
We're really winning with the young client. And we're seeing that younger investors, Gen Z investors, are 46% more likely to invest before they're 21 than the generation before them.
But experts warn there are risks. Markets can swing quickly, and without financial guidance, some could be more exposed to losses. And if this trend continues, it could have bigger implications, not just for Wall Street, but for the housing market itself. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
And that'll be all for us here on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, we hope you have a great week.